Hello and welcome back. We are in day 9. So today's topic is how to design your application to achieve reliability goals. Actually, this is going to be a very important topic for interviews. Whatever I'm going to discuss now, it will help you a lot in interviews. In interviews, there are a lot of questions and also for certification exam. So listen to this until end. I will show you with examples. I will show you various scenarios. In the entire series, I would say this would be a very interesting topic. Okay, so let us get started with this topic. So I'll run through this presentation. Reliability aspires to have zero message or data loss after a Mule application stops or crashes. So main intention is here, even if your Mule application stops or crashes, you should never lose your messages. So you should process the messages reliably. How? So reliability in Mule application can be achieved in multiple ways. One is using a scope called as until successful. Then there is something reconnection strategy, redelivery policy, retry exhausted, transaction management. Not only that, I will tell you, I will discuss different scenarios. How reliability will be impacted in case of Cloud Hub, Runtime Art, Runtime Fabric, and also how to achieve reliability in batch processes. Everything in detail I'm going to discuss. So let us get started actually. So first, I'll discuss about what is this until successful scope. I'll explain you a scenario. For example, let's assume that I have a flow where I have a HTTP listener here mapped to Slum URL. After I get the request, assume that I'm doing some transformation. And after that, I am using insert component of database to insert into database, and then I am setting some response and giving it back. Assume that there is a scenario. The network in which this database is running is assumed to be an unstable network. Now, as you know that it is an unstable network, you have to design your application so that it will work even in case of some temporary network hiccups. So what if at the time a request came when database insert is being fired, what if there is a connection problem? This will throw an error, right? But I know that if I can retry this operation, it might succeed. So for this purpose, we have a scope called as until successful scope. I will wrap this insert component inside until successful scope. So here I can configure what are the max retries, how many times you want to retry, and what is the retry interval. What is the interval between retries? Suppose I have configured 3 retries and 5 seconds is the delay between retries. So this is how we can configure until successful. What will happen whenever a message comes to until successful? It will invoke the components inside it. If there is an error, again until successful will wait for this duration, 5 seconds in this case, and it will do a retry. But how many times maximum? 3. So even after 3 retries, still the message is throwing an exception. Then this until successful will throw an error called as redeliveries exhausted, retry exhausted exception. So what I can do is I can handle that inside on error continue. I can handle that retry exhausted error here, and then I'll give a response saying that there is some problem. Please retry after some time. So the client can retry. So even before giving up, we are at least doing retries, trying to make the application work in such cases where network problems can be there, right? But this is again one more problem is there with until successful. What is the problem? You have to check the service level agreements with your clients. Suppose the service level agreements with your clients says that we want response in maximum 10 seconds. Here I have configured max retries as 3 and retry interval as 5 seconds. So in a worst case, it might take 15 seconds to respond back. So we are not meeting the SLS. So whenever you are configuring until successful, you have to carefully configure this number of retries and retry interval. Maybe in this case, if I configure a retry interval of 2.5 seconds, maximum time it will take is 7.5 seconds, which is less than the SLA time, it will work out. So you can use until successful, but be careful that you meet the SLS. Okay, that is one thing. And one more thing you need to understand is reconnection strategies. Again, I will show you with example in some time. Let me discuss this theoretically first. What do I mean by reconnection strategies? For example, now assume that this until successful is not done. We are just using insert component. So whenever insert component tries to actually talk to database, assume that connection is not successful. At the connector level itself, I can configure a reconnection strategy saying whenever connection is failing, try to obtain a new connection after a delay of, let us say, 2 seconds. And how many maximum times you want to retry. So you can configure reconnection strategies at the connector level itself. So even before this insert component throws an error, it will try to actually obtain a connection again, right? Even after retrying for obtaining connections, if it is failing, then this insert component will throw an error. On top of it, if I've configured until successful, it will retry again this many number of times to do the insert. Okay, so let us see this example. I will show you step by step. Once you see, you'll get more clarity. So here I have a project until successful demo. Here, whatever I have told, I have given. So I have configured HTTP listener map to test, and this logger is just logging this after getting request. Now, instead of using insert, I am just using select for showing you a demo. And I wrapped this inside until successful. How do I wrap it? Let me show you. Just let me remove this. And right click, wrap in until successful. This is how you can wrap inside until successful. Here, I can configure what is the maximum number of retries. I'll configure 3. And what is the milliseconds between retries? Right now, I'll make it as 5000 milliseconds, 5 seconds. Okay, let us see. Now, to configure failures in my services, I actually stopped the database MySQL service. Okay, so let us see how this until successful works. Okay, it is deployed right now. Let me redeploy it to show you clearly. I will redeploy it. Let it start. Okay, it got deployed. Now I'll clear the console and give a request to /test. So let us see the console. Okay, here I'm seeing communication links failure. First time I'm getting the log, whatever is written by the logger after getting the request. Then I can see here it is doing retrace. So what is the time here? Let us see. At 43:17, there is one try. Here you can see the logs retrying execution of the event, attempt 2 of 3. So I should see 3 attempts. Yeah, attempt 3 of 3. That is also failing. Let us see what will happen. If I come down, after 3 times failure, here you can see the until successful scope throwed an error called as Mule : retry exhausted. Of course, it is caused by DB connectivity. So you can see on the inside the logs, retry attempts exhausted. So after all retry attempts exhausted, I am seeing this. Now let us see how much time it took. 23 seconds approximately. So first time try, second time, third time, 3 times redelivery. And approximately there is some delay when it tries to make a connection. Approximately it took 23 seconds, right? So this is the one. Right, we did a retry. So what I am going to do is I'll clear the console and give a request. Okay, but immediately let some request fail. I'm going to start my database. Yeah, database started. Whenever next retry happens, see retry attempt 1 of 3. Whenever next retry happened, a retry attempt happens, I should get a response. Hey, I got a response here. So second time it was successful. Okay. So now you understood about until successful. Now let me show you about a retry reconnection strategy. First of all, to make it clear, I will delete this until successful. And I will go to database connector global element. I am editing this connector. Inside advanced, here there is something called as reconnection. And by default, a reconnection strategy is none. I will select standard. What is the standard reconnection strategy saying? Frequency 2 seconds and reconnection attempts 2. So I can configure whatever I want. So let it be. Okay. So before failing, it will at least do 2 attempts. So just to show you, I can actually give 5 seconds and reconnection attempts 3. Okay. Fine. Now the database is already up. I will stop it. Let me deploy the app. And I'm starting it. One thing I want you to observe here, I can see that the application started. One thing I want you to observe is actually the database is down. During startup, it actually tried to make a connection. Okay. At what time? 47:38. I saw one log. 47:38. I saw this log. And 47:38. See, it actually, the connection failed at 47:38 seconds. So during startup, it tried, but even though the database connection is a failure, the application got deployed successfully. Why? A small thing I want you to understand. First point. So let me go to the connector and edit this connector. Advanced. Do you see here reconnection strategy I configured, but there is a checkbox. Fails deployment when test connection fails. I didn't select it. So as I didn't select it, what is the meaning? The deployment will be successful even though the test connection fails. Okay, I will select this first of all. Okay. And let me restart it. Okay. You can see here the database connection failed. And let us see the logs. Failed to connect. Testing connectivity. It is waiting for 5000 milliseconds before reconnecting. It should have retried for that many number of times, but it failed. Deployment also failed because I configured. I selected this checkbox. Fails deployment when test connection fails. Okay. So now what I will do is I will make my database up. Then I'm going to redeploy the application. Let the deployment be successful. Okay. So it got deployed. Now for showing you, I will stop this database. Stop. And now I'll give a request. Let us see. First time you saw that there was an exception. Now I'll go and start this database. And so it might have tried for obtaining the connection again. And I should have got the response. See, I got the response, success response, because it tried to obtain a connection again and the connection was successful. I configured how many number of retries, reconnections? 3 after a frequency of 5000 milliseconds, 5 seconds. So before 15 seconds, I started my database. So it acquired a connection and I got the response successful. So that's about reconnection strategy. Good. So we understood about how to use reconnection strategies and until successful score. Now, let us talk about what is this redelivery policy. So I'll tell you a use case which we can normally use for a redelivery policy. I'll tell you this use case. Assume that I am actually using ActiveMQ as my message broker. Okay. And I have a queue. Now, the scenario is I have a flow where I have on new message component configured. To receive a message from this queue, this on new message will be listening for messages. Whenever there's a message in this queue, it will take it and process it. Assume that after receiving the message, I'm doing some processing and I am actually this component, whatever it might be, this component is throwing an exception. Okay. Maybe this component is trying to talk to database. There is a temporary network hiccup, or this component may be trying to make a call to a REST API or a SOAP API. There is some problem. So what? It will throw an exception, right? If it throws an exception, what is the default behavior in this case? What is the default behavior in this case? Will this message be automatically deleted from the broker? Even though the message processing failed, it throws an exception. Will the message be removed from the broker? Yes, by default, actually, for this on new message listener, there are acknowledgement modes. The default acknowledgement mode is auto. Auto means once this listener receives the message, it will execute the flow. Once the flow is complete, whether the flow execution is successful or not, once the flow execution is complete, it will send an acknowledgement to the broker. The broker will remove the message. So in this case, what? The message is not processed successfully. This component thrown an exception, but still the message is not there on the broker. So I lost my message, right? So let me simulate that and then I will show you a very interesting things. This is a very interesting scenario. Just see. So I have some flows configured already. So better I'll delete this entire file. I will delete this entire file. Now let me create a new file. Okay. Step by step. Actually, I wanted to show you because this is very important to understand. I want you to observe each and everything. So that's why I am redoing it. I'll drag and drop on new message. I want to receive a message from a queue. So I'll configure this connector. I have added the MQ client and the factory configuration. I will edit in line. As I have an external broker, I'll configure the broker URL as TCP://localhost 61616. This is a broker port. Yes. Fine. That's all. Now I have active MQ started. Maybe I will stop this again and start active MQ for clarity. So this is my active MQ. I'm going to bin 64 active MQ. I just started. This will start active MQ freshly. Then I'll go to localhost 8161, manage active broker. So actually, I have already given the default username and password admin. It directly logged in. I will just delete all the queues. Fine. Now, I'll create a queue called as in queue. So I want to receive messages from this in queue. So coming here, the destination I'll give as in queue. I want to consume it from a queue. So I have to configure the consumer type as queue consumer. So it will start consuming from this in queue. And acknowledgement mode, I'll configure as auto. Even though I don't configure, the default one is auto. Fine. I'll configure the number of consumer threads as 1. Let it be 1 for clarity. And that's all. I'll go with all the other defaults. Then once I receive a message, I want to add a log. So I'll drag and drop a logger. Just write, I'll just write here received. And then plus payload. Then I want to simulate an exception. So what I will do is in this transform message component, I will write if payload, just for simulating an exception, is not equals to Siva. I want to throw an error. So, in data view, DW : runtime : fail is a function to throw an error. I just pass a message just for testing. Else, I will return payload. If payload equals to Siva, equals to Siva, it will throw an error. If payload is not Siva, it will just return the payload. That's all. Fine. Now, let me run this. Broker is already started. Active MQ broker. Let it start. Fine. Now this application got deployed. So let me clear the console. I'll go to the broker. I just wanted to send one message. Normal message to in queue. Number of messages to be sent is 1. And I just send AAA. So actually in my code, if payload equals to Siva, then it is throwing an exception. Else, no problem. So I'll just send a message. If you see the message got enqueued, dequeued. There are no pending messages. And on the console, I should see received AAA. Okay, fine. I'll clear. Now, I will send a new message. One message. Message is Siva. Siva. So if payload is Siva, it will throw an exception during processing. So let us see. Message got removed still, but is there an exception on the console? Yes, there is an exception on the console. So even though there is an exception, the message is removed from the broker because broker got auto acknowledgement. Because I configured here at the connector level, the acknowledgement mode is auto. So what will happen if I configure it as auto? Once the listener receives it, immediately will it send acknowledgement, or it will send acknowledgement after the entire flow is executed? Many people have a confusion here. Once auto acknowledge is configured, what it will do? After receiving, once the flow execution is complete, whether flow execution is successful or failure, whatever, once the flow is complete, then only acknowledgement will be sent. So let me show you. I will actually stop this. I'll keep a breakpoint after receiving. After receiving, in the logger, I kept a breakpoint, and now I will debug. It is asking me to switch to debug perspective. Yes. Yeah, it got deployed now. I will clear the console. Now I kept a breakpoint at the logger. I just, for testing purpose, go here and then click on send. I want to send one message, and I'll just send something other than Siva. Hey, no, I'll send Siva. Let it cause an exception. Now the control is here. That means the listener receives it, but still the flow execution is not complete. Let us see, and let us see in the broker. Is it still? I'll refresh it. Is the message still in pending state? It is not dequeued. It is just enqueued. It is not dequeued. Now I'll press next. Still it is here. Still the message is there in the broker. Now this will throw an exception, but the flow is complete, right? Now the flow is complete even after exception. Now the message listener should have sent an acknowledgement. See, the broker removed. So I lost my message. The message is not there in the broker, but it is removed. So what I want is, I want to do retries. Okay. Let us see how I can configure retries. Here I didn't configure retries, right? Here in this on new message, I didn't configure retries. So what I have to do is, if I have to configure retries, I'll just edit this JMS configuration. Here, I can configure max redeliveries. Just for testing purpose, I'll configure as max redeliveries as 3. Initial redelivery, I'll give as 10 seconds. Redelivery delay as 10 seconds because I wanted you to take time and observe it. Okay. So I configured redeliveries at the connector level. Okay. Now let us see now whether redeliveries will happen or not. Okay. Now it got deployed. I'll clear the console. Go to the broker, and then I'll just send one dummy message into that queue. I'll just send Siva so that it will throw an error. But I wanted to observe redeliveries. At 10:16, there was one error. Okay, again, one more error. Let us see here at what time. 10:26. Now let us wait. 10:36 again. Now 10:36. I should see one more at 10:36. After every 10 seconds, are you observing redeliveries? Yes. So again, 46, again after 10 seconds. So at the last, let us observe how many times. "46" I observed. Yeah, I think 3 times is over, I guess, right? So let us see now what happened to the message. It is removed. Even after all redeliveries, still exception was there. The message is still lost. So I don't want the message to be lost. So normally what we have to do is we have to configure the message which is sent to this queue should be a persistent message. Let us see what will happen if I send a persistent message. Okay. So here, and clear the console. Now, while sending a message here, there's an option called as persistent delivery. Let us see what will happen. Interesting one. I'll configure this as persistent delivery, and now I will send a message, Siva. Now I should observe that it will be redelivered 3 times after a delay of 10 seconds. See, 12:26 at 12:36, one more. 12:36 at 12:46 again, 10 more, and 56 also one more. I guess that is over. Now let us check here in the broker. Now, actually, the message got removed from the in queue, but it is now in the dead letter queue. By default, active MQ will use a dead letter queue. Let us go into this dead letter queue. See, this is the message which is of type persistent. So the broker has moved the message to dead letter queue. And you can see there's a property which is saying delivery 4 exceeds redelivery policy. Here it is showing maximum redeliveries as 3 and redelivery delay is 10 seconds, whatever I configured, right? So it is giving an information and this message is in the dead letter. Now, let me give you one clarity. Even I was confused actually. I will give you very good clarity what is happening. Now, my question is, the doubt which I had earlier was, I configured redelivery policy here in this connect redelivery. Now, is this message, see, exception is thrown, right? So once exception is thrown, is the redelivery from the broke or within the Mule application, is this on new message component redelivering the message for the flow? That is a confusion. I used to think that the broker is doing the redelivery. If broker is doing the redelivery, don't you think that there is network delays because the message has to come over the network and reach here, right? So that is not the case actually. By default, this on new message is a consumer to this broker, right? On the consumer side, redeliveries will be done. So first time it received a message, right? It received a message and the acknowledgement mode is auto. So it received a message, acknowledgement mode is auto. Now what happened? After the flow is executed, this throws an exception. So once the exception is thrown, this on new message, what it will do? It will store this message until redelivery time. 10 seconds I configured as redeliver, right? Until 10 seconds, it will maintain in memory. And then after 10 seconds, it will deliver the same message to the flow. So remember, this redelivery is done on the consumer side. That means inside Mule, this listener is doing the redeliveries and executing, right? So after all redeliveries are executed, even though after all redeliveries are executed, if you uh, if the exception is still happening, now this on new message will send a message to the broker saying it will not send a normal acknowledgement. It will send a poison acknowledgement. So the acknowledgement which it sends to broker says the broker that this message is a poison message. So the broker by default sends this message to a default dead letter queue. So this dead letter queue configuration can be done on the broker side. How? I'll go to ActiveMQ conf. Here is ActiveMQ. Here, there is a file called as activemq.xml in the conf. Under broker, we can configure some policies. So here, I have added it. I'll just uncomment this policy. This policy entry saying if the queue name is matching this star means it's a wildcard, it will match any queue. Now I uncommented this. According to this policy, it is saying the dead letter strategy queue prefix should be Siva DLQ. Siva DLQ should be the prefix. Now, once I have configured this policy, let me restart the broker now. This is a broker side configuration I have done. I'll go to bin, restart. Now let it restart. I'll just go here to the queues and I'll delete this queue. I'll delete the queues. Let this in queue be there. Now, what I will do is my application is still running. Yes, the application is still running. Let me clear the console. I will send one message, persistent delivery. I have to check. Otherwise, the message will not be sent to dead letter. Then I'll configure Siva so that exception will be thrown on my flow. Set. Now redeliveries will happen. I'm not saying anything on the console. Okay, I just will restart my application as well. Okay. See, once it application started, it is trying to redeliver the message. First time it failed. Second time, let us wait for 10 more seconds. Yes, 1956. And here, I think first one came at 1946. After 10 seconds, I got one more message. 1956. And 26. After 10 more seconds, I got one more. So 2016 again I got one more. So I guess all are exhausted. Now let us go and check. Hey, sorry. This queue name is still activemq.dlq. Did I save my changes? This is not saved. Okay, so let me save it. That is a mistake. I didn't save it. I have to redeploy my application. So restart my broker again. Okay, and also I will redeploy my application. Okay, it got deployed now. I'll clear the console. I will just send one message to in queue, number of messages 1, persistent delivery, I have to select it. Then I'll send the message 0. Let us wait for 30 seconds for the 3 redeliveries to be over. Yes, I guess 3 redeliveries are already over. Then now let us go to the broker and check. Hey, the message is now is in Siva DLQ.inq. My INQ in queue is my original queue name. Dead letter queue name is according to the convention. So if you see here, I have configured queue prefix is Siva DLQ. So basically, if your message is a persistent message and after all retries also, if the message is not processed successfully, your message will be kept in the dead letter queue. So my message is not lost, right? So this is one thing to process the messages reliably. You can configure persistent messages. So and configure the broker to send a message to dead letter queue. Okay, fine. Now the thing is, I'll show you one more thing. Let's assume that after logging, I want to send a message. That's a processed message. What I will do is I will set the response. I'll set a payload, modify the payload plus plus. I just say response. Whatever is the payload right now, I want to send it to another queue. So what I will do is publish the destination is Siva reply queue. Just for example, Siva reply queue. I want to send it to queue. Okay, whatever is the payload, I want to send it. Now let us see what will happen. Let it be redeployed. Yeah. So I'll just clarity. I'll send one message in and make it persistent. And the message is Siva so that exception will be thrown. Okay. Is okay. I don't see an exception. Oh, okay. The thing is, I didn't see an exception because I've set the payload as this one, right? The transform message component is not throwing an exception. Fine. I'll just do the modification so that it will throw an exception. Just for demonstration purpose, I have modified it. Let it be redeployed. Actually, the reply in earlier message, load Siva response. That is fine. So that was a success scenario. I will delete this now. Is application started? Yes. Fine. Now let me send one message to in-queue persistent delivery. And here I'll use Siva. Fine. Now it will do a retry, redelivery. An error occurred, returning it to the queue. After 10 seconds, again, exception. Again, after 10 seconds, redeliveries are done. Fine. Now let us go here and see. 3 messages are there in the reply queue. 3 messages are there in the reply queue. Actually, 3 times redelivery, right? 3 times the message got delivered and 3 times it is there. Let me again refresh. See, 4 messages, 4 times this flow got executed. First one is delivery, 3 times redelivery, 4 times the messages got published. After all 4 redeliveries, the message is kept in dead letter queue. But hey, I don't expect the message to be in the reply queue. 4 messages, duplicate messages. Oh, so this is a side effect of re-deliveries, right? So what I want is, I want to run this receiving, sending, everything in a transaction, so that if no exception in the flow, then transaction should be committed. That means whatever message has been published to the queue, that should be committed. Okay. Otherwise, everything should be rolled back. Now, what I can do is I can configure this queue in advanced. Transactions by default is none. I'll configure always begin. So once it receives a message, it will start a transacted session. Transaction whatever mode is configured, it will be ignored. So the session actually can be either an acknowledged session or a transacted session. So if I configure that the session is a transacted session, that means if I configure the transactional action, that means the session which this consumer starts with the broker will be a transacted session. The acknowledgement mode, even though we have configured, that will be ignored. So once it receives a message in a transaction. And this publish component, here also we can configure transactional option. Join if possible. That means this is a default. If there is a transaction already before the control comes to publish, it will join the transaction. So then the message will be published, but transaction is not yet committed. Then in the next component, what will happen? Exception is thrown, right? So if exception is thrown in the flow, the transaction will be rolled back. The transaction will be rolled back. Okay. Then the message, actually it is redelivered. Again, as I configure redeliveries, it will try to redeliver, right? Let us see now. What will happen? I will restart for clarity. Let it restart. And for clarity, let me delete everything from the reply queue and all. Start. So now let us see. I'll clear the console. I'll send one message, persistent delivery. Then I'll send Siva. So what happens here? Redeliveries will happen. Let us wait. I'll clear the console. Yes, again 31, 38. Again at 31, 48. Clear. Yep. At 31, 58 again redelivered. So 3 times is over. Now you can see in dead letter queue my original message is there, but whatever is there in reply queue, it is not committed. Every time it was rolled back, right? So that is how actually you can use a transacted session. Okay, now you understood about redeliveries, how to configure redeliveries, how to configure a transacted session. So basically 3 times the transaction failed, but still the message is not lost, right? If there was no transaction, actually I was seeing 4 messages, it was not. So you can use transactions to deliver the messages reliably without losing it or without actually sending the duplicate messages. So that is what I was telling here. You can achieve reliability using until successful scope we have seen, reconnection strategy we have seen, redelivery policies we have seen, and after all retries, still if the message is not successfully processed, of course, it will throw an error retry exhausted, which we can handle. And then we can do whatever we want. Maybe I might want to write that message to a database. I can handle it and I can write. And I showed you how you can use transactions, right? So this is how you can process your applications reliably. Okay. So now there is one more pattern actually called as uh, reliability pattern. Let us discuss about reliability pattern and other things in next lecture. See you.